Hello and welcome to Red Lantern Analytica's podcast series. I'm your host, Vanchinathan, and today we're diving into a topic that is increasingly shaping geopolitics, security, and stability: water security in Southeast Asia. Joining us today is Mr. Neeraj Singh Manhas, a leading expert on South Asian strategic affairs, to help us unpack complex intersection of water, geopolitics, and climate change. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Thank you, Anchi, for your kind invitation, and I'm very thankful to Red Lantern think tank also for having this conversation, because this is quite timely, and I believe that in the coming time, our focus would be more on non-traditional security aspect, and water becomes a main integral part of it. So I'm looking forward to our great conversation.
Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Let's begin with a broad question on how do we define water security in the South Asian context, and why is it becoming such a critical issue today, sir?
Okay. Just very rightly questioned, because just to understand water as a subject, we need to understand what exactly this water security also means. So just to briefly and just in a very layman language, if I have to put it, so water security means, when a person is having, clean water, enough water to drink, to sustain his needs for his livelihood, whether it's for his livelihood, for his other activities, for his farming. So when he's able to manage the water in different, according to his needs, where he's able to prioritize water with his needs, or when he's able to fill his needs with the other activities which are also related with the water, like agriculture is there, livelihood is there, for his personal use, commercial use. So, and this, apart from that also, if we have to define it in a context of world, UN World Water has also defined it in a very strategically way also. And there are different definitions which are also available for the water security. And in context of South Asia, this definition also fits in very perfectly, because in South Asia, which is a home of 8 large countries, and where billions of people are residing, they're largely dependent on water, and water becomes quietly a need for them to sustain their life. So I believe that in South Asia, and equally as a water security as a term, is being very much equally defined, where things needs to be shared in a very equitable way.
Yes. So what makes this challenge more urgent, say compared to a decade ago or 2 decades ago? What was it to be in a situation or in a dilemma where water security was so important in the contemporary era, because it is more or less connected to what we are in the geopolitical situation? So how was it back then, a decade ago, or say 2 decades ago, sir?
Okay, so we were having a discussion of water, and the security element was very much missing at that point of a time. But water security, we also need to see how we are actually defining the security, because as we are analyzing the security in terms of geopolitics.
Yes.
Sometimes it's meant to be in form of militarization, right?
Yes.
Sometimes it's in a form of non-traditional security. So first of all, this security needs to be defined very well. When we are talking in context of countries, we need to define this security. Now, with the previous decade, because you mentioned, because this water security as a term, previous decade or now, it was not very well defined. But now with the coming time, where countries are basically focusing on militarization, weaponization of water, so this security term gets more in a wider way. So that is how in South Asia also, as I mentioned, there are 8 countries, and each country has their own water security needs, and water becomes an integral part of it, because most of the country, all millions of people, billions of people are dependent on the water. And we need to understand and see one thing here: we are having a geographical boundaries between the countries, but rivers do not share boundaries.
Yes.
And when these water bodies do not share boundaries, then we cannot bound them, but we cannot capture it. So that is how, who will get what and who will get how much. That is the question of the hour, and that is how, in South Asia context also, countries keep on fighting for the water, and water security itself becomes a limelight in that.
Yes. So clearly geography and the population pressure in the South Asian context have become a key issue. But however, we come to the next question: how this brings up into the political dimension of water security, or how do countries use water security as a tool to perceive their interests, sir?
Okay. This is being very well defined in South Asia context also, and with the other region also. But my focus would be more on South Asia. We have seen a very good example about India-Pakistan.
Yes.
And between India and Pakistan, we know that we have in 1960s we have signed Indus Water Treaty. So this is perfectly fits into the whole scenario of water dimension, where we wanted to have a larger good relation with the country, because so that we can share the equitable sharing of water distribution between the rivers which we share with the Pakistan. Now the another example comes up with the Bangladesh. In 1970s, we signed a River Water Commission with them, and then in 1995 we shared Ganges India Ganga Water Treaty, and now which is for some time 30 periods of time, which is going to expire in December 2026. But the main focus part is that how we were ready to accept how the political dimension was coming up into the picture of water. So that is how I believe that water takes up a political and geopolitical dynamics when two people fight for the water. And water just not in context ki that as I just mentioned, who will get what and how much.
Yes.
So that's a question of the hour which countries ask, and that's their own national interest, because every country is in day by day economically rising also. And their population needs are also becoming more, the urbanization, the industrialization. So everyone wants to have a securitize their water in context. So that is how when the moment and the problem comes when the water gets mixed with the politics.
Yes.
Water gets mixed with the geographical dimension, with a lot of territorial things. So I believe that is the problem where the countries fight and the political angle gets heated up.
Sir, is there a pattern where cooperation provides dispute tensions, or are we moving forward to more of a competition when, as far as the security concerns of water is taken into consideration?
Okay, so very right question to ask at this time, because I believe that cooperation itself will not come without the conflict, because there would be some kind of a conflicts between countries, and then that's how the countries then come to the point of consensus where they also seek for a cooperation. That's the first point. My second point is that water itself is not a challenge. There are other dimensions to it also. There are border issues, there are geopolitical rivalry, competition, strategic competition. So there are so many other tangible issues which are there. But now water is becoming the focal point, because no country in this current geopolitical era wants to have a direct war. Although we have had examples of what happened in the Middle East, what happened with the Russia-Ukraine war, but now you can see the consequences.
Yes.
How much they have to face back. They have to revive their whole economy to get back to on their backbone. So with the case of India, the policy of foreign policy has revived, and it has changed, over a period of time. So we are ready to have dialogues, we are ready to have cooperation, but just not in a case of conflict. We do not want to engage with any country with a direct conflict. That's the first motto which I see it with Indian foreign policy, which has evolved over a period of time from the 1947 till 2026. But the only issue which I'm witnessing with the water is that the moment we add up the political angle to it, the problem gets more highlighted. So I believe having these kind of challenges, cooperation and conflict will be a part of it, but we will have to see how much we want, at that, because it is also strategically.
Yes.
When we want cooperation, we will definitely go with the cooperation. When we are seeing that any country is not ready to cooperate us in that way, definitely there would be definitely challenges which are also connected with the conflict. So both the things will have to have that kind of equilibrium balance, and it depends on the countries to countries, their own national interest and their perspective, how they want to see this as a growing challenge.
Okay. Uh, Sir, we move on to the next question. We look into water through the prism of geopolitics. Say, for example, we have the Yalman Sapo arising from the Tibetan plateau flowing into India through Arunachal Pradesh as Siam, then to Assam and Brahmaputra, and Jamuna in Bangladesh. So, how does this relevance or reflects the relation between India and China with regards to as far as the Siam is concerned, or we call it the Brahmaputra is concerned, and to a further extent, how does Jamuna flows into relations with Bangladesh and India? Would you elaborate on the concept of India-China relations to this?
Okay, so before getting into the India-China water, or how the Bangladesh comes into the picture, we need to understand the riparian relation. And riparian, when I talk about riparian, any river which is coming from one country and flowing to the another country and then going to the another country. So China, India, Bangladesh becomes a case of it. So any country which is on the upper region, it is known as upper riparian. India in this case becomes a middle riparian. Then the lower riparian becomes the Bangladesh. So now, having said that, we need to see how much the upper riparian countries, in this case China, is ready to cooperate on the river issues. And now you talked about Yarlan Sangro. So now the moment this river flows from the upper riparian and flows down to the lower riparian, that is whether it's India or Bangladesh, this is known as Yarlan Sangro. The moment it enters to the Arunachal Pradesh, this becomes Siam. Then the moment it comes lower down to the another state of Assam, it becomes Brahmaputra. So now this is all, having said, all people are well aware of it, but now what is the problem? The problem is, cascades of dams, the construction of dams. When any country on the upper riparian tries to have a unilateral decision of making dams construction on the upper riparian, it becomes a problem.
Yes.
And it will always become a problem to always disadvantages a country which is on the lower end. Because any country which is on the upper end, it will always have an advantage.
We had the situation of China taking unilateral decision on the building a construction dam in the Meghaw Committee, Meghaw County.
Yeah.
So how does that reflect into this context?
So this is basically a new dam which is recently in December 2024, which was initiated by China, that in their 14th five-year plan, that they are going to construct this dam. And in 2025, I remember July 2025, they have started constructing this dam. So now why this becomes important, because as I mentioned about the riparian relation, but the second part is how much the real-time data, the hydrological data is country is ready to give it to you to the lower riparian country. Because the moment any country which is on the lower end, any form of a flood-like situation which is coming from the upper riparian, we need to have a real-time hydrological data, and this data is also not coming throughout the year, just during the monsoon time, from June to till September or October. So having this kind of a limited information, and that too not very much transparent. So how do you expect the transparency or the trust will be built between two countries? So that is how the geopolitical angle comes into the picture, and both countries fight for their own solidarity because both countries have their big countries in the Asia, and their strategic competition comes to the power, and mistrust leads to the another layer of angle which we are not able to solve it out till now. So I believe with the case of Pakistan also, we signed in a hope of good solidarity, that these are brother, and this country got separated from us in 1947. Then in 60s we tried to revive our relation with them. But look at the condition the Pahalgam attack happened, and then seeing that kind of a condition, we have to put our abeyance on the Indus Water Treaty. So we are ready to cooperate. We believe in that kind of solidarity, but there needs to be the other countries which are there on the our neighboring countries. They also need to sit back and talk about our issues which are with them. So without that cooperation, I don't think we are going to work out on all these issues, and these issues will highlight more and more into the coming time.
Sir, as far as the data that are being deducted from the Chinese end, how much is about the trust deficit that we are facing currently, and what are the steps that the Indian government could take towards addressing these concerns of data?
Okay, so data is very important first of all, because as I just mentioned, real-time hydrological data which we get from the upper riparian China is very important first of all. And same with the case of Bangladesh also, we provide them real-time hydrological data and being an upper riparian to them, or they are also getting it from the China also directly. Now look at the disparity here in 2017 when Doklam issue happened. This data was stopped. Just citing the error in I would say the I think some logistic or some reason was given to us that we are not able to provide you the real time, but the same data was provided to the Bangladesh. So that is how, and since 2020 when the Galwan border standoff happened, since then we are not
Receiving data from
data,
Chinese end.
and that too, and the data which we also get, it's not very much correct data. It's been mostly reports says that it's been very much manipulated, or even just to extract some data. Also we talk about cooperation. How would cooperation happen if when you charge some money from me?
Yes.
Cooperation only happens on
Trust,
on
mutual
trust,
understanding.
because you talked about mistrust, because our relation have been formed with that mistrust only. With 1962 of war, that mistrust is still continuing. We have been very cautious whatever we do. We are building our border infrastructure both sides at the Galwan, western and central, and with the eastern sector also. But we are also dependent on them. Look at the trade. In 2025 we have crossed more than $155 billion of trade. One hand we are talking about our relation also, but on the strategic end we also want to have a competition. But that's a Chinese side. We are always welcome the cooperation side. We have done our expert level mechanism since 2016, 6 onwards. We have tried to read work, but I don't see anything coming from the China's end. And I'm not saying that they are culprit on also. They also have their own energy needs. They also want to build up their electricity. They also want to cater the world largest populated country it was, and India, China, both of them are. So I will not say the competition is there, but they want to have a great power competition in the Asia, and how things are changing. So I believe that mistrust cannot be built in a day. Both the countries will have to sit together, and we're sitting together, just India, China, it's very tough task. And I had a conversation with the Chinese counterpart few days back. We were there with a track dialogue with the Chinese experts. Still very far to go, I believe, and a lot of actions both on Indian side, more on Chinese side, I would say, needs to be taken. Otherwise, this issue is not going to solve just in the current time.
So on the ecological front, how do you see this construction of dam in the Bedong County affect the local indigenous people, be it the Tibetans and be it the Arunachal Pradesh localites? How do you see it affects them on a first place in an economic sense? And in the second place, how do you see the sustainable angle to it? Of course, a huge construction of dam would cause an irregular flow of water, or be it disruption in the local flora and fauna. So how can we look into it, and how are the Chinese looking into it?
Okay. First you asked me about the ecological. So ecologically, definitely, whenever a dam is being constructed, whether it's on Indian side, whether it's on China's side, in the Tibet, Definitely, it always have a disadvantage of a disadvantage on the ecosystem. Uh, I'll give you example. Whenever a dam is being constructed, it will always add a huge mass migration. That's the first part because the local livelihood. Because you mentioned about Tibetans also. So I'll give you one example of this Yangtze, you know, Three Gorges Dam, which is built on, which is currently the world largest Three Gorges Dam on the Yangtze River. So once this was operationalized in 2010, so this has also led to a huge number of people which was migrated from that place. First part is that. Secondly, it has also disturbed their flora and fauna of that region because huge part would be cemented. There would be reservoirs where water would be kept, and the fisheries, the it will be migrated, and the fertility of that region also will also be disturbed. So definitely it adds a more burden to the ecosystem, but we also need to see the intent. Now, why I mention about intent, because China's intent would be weaponization, but when we are also constructing, India has constructed more than 5,000 dams, but we are not saying that we are keeping our people or our indigenous people who are based in Arunachal or Assam, they've also got migrated. But we are at least being a democratic country, we are not keeping them on down. Our notion or the narrative which we have tried to put when we were started constructing dam on the Upper Siang also, when Medong County dam was started constructing, we clearly stated that this is for the benefit of the people of Northeast, because through which we want to generate more and more electricity. We want to create a network of electricity hub from a state grid where we want to connect it with the national grid. First part is that. Second part is that we also want to tell them that this is also for the protection of the people, that this will add as a buffer point between India and China, where when any sudden release of water comes, this dam could makes as a becomes a buffer zone for the people of who are based in the downstream region. Secondly, we also want to definitely want to give them a clear idea that why we are constructing it, what is the idea, how much we are spending it, what is the national security threat to us. Although we don't want to share more information in terms of national security, but we also don't want to keep them under. Although there would be people who would never ever be happy with the government's decision, definitely we cannot make everyone happy with the decision, but there are definitely certain aspects to it which we would realize it in the later long time back. Because this is not we are going to witness just in a year's time. This would have a cascade of long-term planning. So definitely people will realize it when this Medong County dam will operationalize in 2030s. So then people will have more things to see that how India also counter this as for a long term. So I believe in that way India is going it in a very good direction. Cooperation needs, but it's very difficult to.
So clearly, this is no longer just an environmental issue, but a full spectrum of a security concern.
Right.
So where do you see this biggest data gaps? Are they in data sharing, or is it in the trust, or is it in the institutional design of the CCP on this lines?
I believe just not one angle is important. I believe if we add and see and connect, all these angles are very much connected. I said, and I mentioned about data sharing is equally important. Secondly, with the institutional also, it's very important, because if you not have institution to institution connection or with the cultural connection, I don't see these things are happening. If you are not sharing a data, just you are taking billions of dollars, if you just click on the Indian Embassy Chinese website, you will find that how much we have given them money. Earlier, they never used to charge. You are talking about cooperation, but you also want to take money. That's the first point, which is very much absurd, which I find between. China doesn't need money. I mean, they are ready to pay $167 billion to construct Medong County Dam, and they just want to extract money from us to extract a real-time data, which is just for our own benefit. How do you think that the cooperation will be just on the basis of that? Not possible. there is a institutional gap between both the countries. There is always will be a gap. We tried to revive this in 2017, where IIT Guwahati and with the Indian counterpart or Chinese counterpart, they professors, academicians, they exchanged.
Sort of a track.
Yeah, they tried to do that, but I saw that failing after the Galwan Valley. And then institutionally also with other activities which takes place between India China. Right now, we are at a situation where things starting melting down. We are on on a position where we are talking about cooperation. We recently started with Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. We are right now, few days back, we are also talking about India-China Beijing direct flight, which was not there. And but on the river side, MOU got expired in 2023. Still now, no talks has been done. But I believe with the India's BRICS presidency, foreign ministers would meet and definitely they would discuss about this growing challenge also, and there would be some kind of a hope to the people and to the academician, to the practitioners who are actually focusing, and they have a highlighting aspect on this, that how we can also get rid of this kind of a problem. So this would also tell in the coming time how we can also challenge and deal with this problem.
So what kind of regional or a multilateral framework that can be institutionalized to improve cooperation, not just in context to India-China or India-Pakistan, but on an overall regional stability in South Asia?
Okay, so there are, we believe in cooperation, so we built up a lot of regional organizations. SARC was there, BIMSTEC was there, but I believe, just leave SARC aside, because SARC, more in terms of geographical, people try to connect, but it has a very less role now because it's not very much operationally actively involved. But I see BIMSTEC can be a good, organization which can, because in BIMSTEC, two ASEAN countries are also involved, and we can also learn a lesson from MRC, Mekong River Commission, which is for the ASEAN country, and which has actually, China's side, Lanshan Mekong Commission, LMC, which was very much actively, and China has actually supported that. So that kind of a support with the BIMSTEC help, I believe, if we can also frame that kind of institution with the help of BIMSTEC, or if we try to frame it just in a context of India-China, because we need to see here one problem, that India-China countries, both the countries are not ready to negotiate on the water. But if we add water with the other element, for example, agriculture, food security with the other element, then I believe that there is a chance where we can connect water as an element, because just as a water element, I don't think countries are flexible enough to come to the table and talk. But if we add or amend our MOU, which was signed in 2002, and we renew it on a 5-year basis, if we amend that, and with the help of BIMSTEC, adding more layers to it, I think we have a still better way to look at it. And expert level mechanism also works in the back end. In 2025, we had an expert level mechanism where we had a conversation that we would revive our river relation, riparian relation between both the countries. But we'll also have to see how we do it, because implementing it on the ground, it's very important. Just saying it in the air that we will do this, we will revive SARC, BIMSTEC, doesn't go anywhere. We'll have to have some actionable solution to it. We'll have to implement it on the ground and see how both the countries are ready to negotiate, because having just saying water will not add a value to it. Having other dimensions to a water, definitely I see it happening. So definitely I believe that when it goes to the policymakers or to the practitioners, I believe that there is a still way to go.
So before we wrap up, I'd like to bring us back to the India's policy priorities. So what policy steps should India prioritize to ensure a long-term water security while managing both the geopolitical front as well as the climate-related challenges? So you mentioned about reviving back the MOU, setting up separate committees. And so what are the challenges that we are facing on these lines? So what is stopping us from reviving the MOU with China? Or what is stopping us from setting up a committee to review on the progress of these? Or what is stopping us from asking China to give us more data on the hydrological front?
Okay, so I believe that with China it's very difficult because any country which is on the upper riparian, it's very difficult. We cannot change our geographical location. That's very clear. But we also need to see that we are also not very much disadvantage of the situation because, as you know, that Brahmaputra's water consumption it is more in Assam, annual water flow. It is more, and so we are that way more advantageous, but also disadvantage because we are on the lower end. That is the first point. My second point is it's very difficult because you mentioned why it's difficult. It's difficult because both the countries are not ready because both the countries are big in number, population, urbanization. They are also geopolitically rival to each other. Also, we are having a good number of trade with them. But also, when it comes to the strategic competition, we don't want to cooperate. But when we want to cooperate, we are ready to disengage also on the border, on the water also. Now, in 2026, we know that the climate change is coming to the action. Now, definitely, we'll try to have a cooperation. I'm definitely sure about it. But we also need to see that it's just not about that, switch on and off game. We also need to see how much people are going to face in the coming time. So I believe that a lot of action needs to be done. For example, we also talk about local indigenous people. Their voices also needs to be heard. That's the first point because that's missing in the policy frame. That's the first point. And the second point is we also need to develop our northeastern state because that's the most vulnerable states and the part of our India which would have a more impact and the consequences in the larger time. So we have to develop them, fully equip them. Just not about the problem. We have to ready for the situation. If anything happens, how we are going to respond to it. We'll also have to develop our early warning system. If anything happens, how we are going to react in that situation. We also need to add a dimension of artificial intelligence or the technology, which is very much important. I believe if we don't need a hydrological data from China, we can also do it from a satellite. We have the capability, we have the money, we have the
resources.
Resources. We can do it, but it is just how we take the use of technology, how we take the help of other ASEAN countries, what are the successful examples which you are also learning from MRC. We'll have to implement them on South Asia in context of India, China, and that's how I believe a lot of new things needs to be revived in case of India, China here, but direct would be starting with the amendment of MOUs because these are non-binding or sometimes binding, depends on the mood or depends on the political relation. The moment our political relation gets good, our border disengagement gets properly manageable, but it also affects the other relation. And border relation has impacted the water relation. I've written specifically one paper on it. It has got a very good highlight on it. And how water relations are connected with the border relations, specifically seeing it from the Galwan Valley standard. So I believe these are some of the challenges, some of the solutions, but the only the problem lies in that how we sit together, implement them. Just not by talking, but implementing them. But I'm very hopeful and very sure that with India's BRICS presidency this year, there would be other sideline talks between India, China, and definitely they are going to work on this ripened relation also because this is the only point which is left between these two countries, and we'll able to work on all these issues.
Thank you so much for joining on this conversation today, sir. The conversations we had today highlighted water is not just a resource, but it sits at the central focus where it is seen as a tool for geopolitics, climate security, and of a regional cooperation as well. To our viewers, thank you for turning in today. Stay connected with Red Lantern Analytica for more such conversations on global and regional affairs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.